My wife acted like I was invisible while texting her affair partner. The kids would smirk and exchange looks. For months, I was the family joke. Then I dismantled everything while they watched, and they had no idea what hit them. All right, Reddit, strap in because this one's a long ride. Fair warning, this isn't some feel-good story about therapy and reconciliation. This is about a man who got played by his entire family and decided to burn it all down with surgical precision. I'm 38 male, a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company in Ohio. Not glamorous, but decent money. Around $72,000 a year plus benefits. Started as a warehouse grunt at 22, worked my way up through operations management. Now I coordinate supply chains for the Midwest region. It's the kind of steady, boring career that pays the mortgage and funds 401k contributions, but won't impress anyone at parties. Met my wife Victoria, 36 female, when I was 25. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Had that girl next door vibe that made her seem approachable and real. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Nothing fancy, just a courthouse ceremony and dinner with close friends. Looking back, that should have been my first clue she wasn't satisfied with simple. The early years were actually good. Victoria was different then. Or maybe I just didn't see what was always there. She'd pack me lunches for work with little notes inside. We'd spend weekends exploring state parks, cooking together, planning our future. When Olivia was born, Victoria seemed genuinely happy with our life. She'd send me photos throughout the day of the baby, excited messages about milestones. But something shifted after Brandon arrived. Victoria started making comments about our friends who had nicer things, bigger houses, newer cars, exotic vacations. She'd scroll through social media and sigh dramatically about other people's seemingly perfect lives. I'd try to remind her we were doing fine, that we were building something solid. But those conversations always ended with her saying I didn't understand what she wanted. I should have paid more attention to those signs. The way she'd light up when talking about her divorced friend Jenny's freedom. How she'd spend hours getting ready just to go to the grocery store. The gradual shift from being my partner to being someone who tolerated my presence in exchange for financial security. We have 2 kids, Olivia, 15 female, and Brandon, 13 male. For years, I thought we had a solid family unit. Not perfect, but functional. I worked long hours. Victoria stayed home after Brandon was born, and we did the whole suburban family routine. Soccer practices, school events, family dinners. The American dream, right? Wrong. The first time I noticed something off was about 18 months ago. Victoria started spending more time on her phone. I'm not talking normal social media scrolling. I mean, she'd be texting constantly, smiling at her screen, then quickly locking it when I walked into the room. Classic cheater behavior, but I didn't want to believe it. Work stuff, she'd say when I asked. Just coordinating with the PTA committee. Sure, because PTA emails require that many heart eye emojis. But here's where it gets worse, way worse. The kids knew. I started noticing these little moments where Victoria would get a text, smile, and Olivia would glance over and smirk. Or Victoria would be typing away, and Brandon would catch her eye, and they'd share this knowing look. Like they were all in on some inside joke. And the joke was me. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. I'd walk into the living room and the conversation would stop. I'd ask what's for dinner and get this exasperated sigh like I'd interrupted something important. Victoria would be mid-text, I'd say something, and she'd respond without even looking up. What? Yeah, whatever you want. The kids started treating me like I was invisible too. I'd try to talk to Olivia about her day at school, and she'd give me one-word answers while texting her friends. Brandon would ask his mom for permission to do things without even acknowledging I was in the room. It was like I'd become a ghost in my own house. Family dinners became a joke. I'd sit there trying to make conversation while Victoria texted under the table, not even hiding it anymore. And the kids would be on their phones too. When I'd suggest we have a no phones at dinner rule, Olivia rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised she didn't sprain something. Dad, it's not the 1950s, she said with this condescending tone that made my blood boil. Victoria didn't back me up, just gave me this look that said, pick your battles, and went back to her phone. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. A united front on parenting had been one of our core agreements early in the marriage. Seeing her undermine me in front of the kids, that was a red flag the size of Texas. The disrespect escalated. I'd come home from work and find Victoria getting ready to go out. Where are you headed? I'd ask. Out with Jenny, she'd say, not making eye contact. Jenny was her friend from college who'd recently gotten divorced. Convenient cover story. What time will you be back? I don't know, Kevin. I'm an adult. I don't need a curfew. Then she'd leave, and I'd be stuck with 2 teenagers who treated me like the hired help. Can you make dinner? Can you drive me to Ashley's house? Can you give me money for the movies? I became the ATM dad who existed to provide resources and stay out of the way. The worst part was watching it happen in real time and feeling powerless to stop it. I'd try to connect with Brandon about his interests, asked him about his video games, offered to take him to a concert he mentioned wanting to see. He'd give me these one-word answers like I was wasting his time. Meanwhile, Victoria would swoop in with some inside joke, and they'd both laugh while I stood there like an outsider. Olivia was even worse. She'd started dressing differently, more mature, more expensive clothes that I knew I hadn't paid for. When I asked where she got the money, she'd say, "Mom gave it to me," with this challenging look, daring me to question it further. Where was Victoria getting extra money? I paid all the bills, all the household expenses. The math wasn't adding up. I later discovered she'd opened a credit card in my name without telling me. Been charging stuff for months. Clothes for herself and Olivia, dinners out, gym membership upgrades. When I found the statements, buried in her desk drawer, the balance was over $8,000. $8,000 of debt I didn't know existed, for a lifestyle I wasn't invited to participate in. The tipping point came about 6 months ago. I'd been working on a major project at work, coordinating a logistics overhaul that would save the company about $400,000 annually. It was a big deal, something I'd been developing for months. I was excited to tell someone about it. I came home and found Victoria on the couch, texting and smiling. "Hey, good news, my project got approved. They're implementing my system across all regional centers." She didn't even look up. "That's nice. It's a pretty big promotion opportunity. Could mean a raise, maybe even a director position." I stood there for a solid 30 seconds while she kept texting, completely absorbed in her phone. Finally, I said, "Victoria, are you even listening to me?" She glanced up with this annoyed expression. "Yes, Kevin, your work thing. That's great. Can we talk about this later? I'm busy." Busy texting. Too busy for her husband's career milestone. That night, I heard her on the phone in the bedroom. The door was cracked, and I could hear her voice, excited, animated, laughing, the way she used to talk to me 10 years ago. I know, no, he's clueless. Yeah, he just goes to work and comes home like nothing's wrong. I swear he has no idea." My stomach dropped. The pieces were all there, but I'd been too busy working and providing to see the full picture. My wife was having an affair, my kids knew about it, and they were all treating me like the fool who couldn't figure it out. I could have confronted her right then, could have burst through the door and demanded answers, but something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was strategy, but I decided to wait. If my family wanted to treat me like an idiot, I'd give them exactly what they expected, right up until I didn't. The next morning, I started documenting everything. Every late night out, every suspicious text, every time the kids exchanged those knowing looks with their mother. I kept a detailed log with dates, times, and descriptions. I also started recording conversations on my phone. Ohio is a one-party consent state, so completely legal. I set up a basic camera system in the house using old phones as security cameras. Nothing invasive, just the living room and kitchen, common areas. Told Victoria it was for home security after there'd been some break-ins in the neighborhood. She barely acknowledged it. That camera caught gold. Within 2 weeks, I had footage of Victoria on video calls with someone, clearly romantic in nature. The angle didn't show the other person's screen, but her side of the conversation was damning. "I miss you too. I can't wait. He's so boring, he doesn't even notice." I also discovered she'd been more careful about her phone, but not careful enough. She used the same 4-digit PIN for everything. Our wedding anniversary. Because of course she did. When she was in the shower one morning, I cloned her phone using some basic software. Every text, every photo, every call log. Now I had a complete copy updating in real time. The affair partner was a guy named Tyler from her gym. Personal trainer type. About 8 years younger than her. Probably making minimum wage while living in his buddy's basement. Classic midlife crisis material. The messages were exactly what you'd expect. Lots of complaining about her boring husband. Lots of promises about their future together. Lots of inappropriate photos I didn't need to see. But the worst part? The kids were absolutely in on it. I found messages where Victoria had told Olivia about Tyler. Olivia's response? "He sounds way better than Dad Loel. When can I meet him?" Brandon's messages were less enthusiastic but still complicit. "Does Dad know? Okay, just wondering. Yeah, I won't say anything. My own kids, helping their mother cheat, treating me like a joke." Reading those messages was like getting punched in the gut repeatedly. Olivia, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who I'd stayed up with during every nightmare, who I'd driven to dance classes for 6 years. She was actively rooting for my marriage to fail. Brandon, who I'd coached in Little League, who I'd helped with every science project, who called me his hero when he was 8. He knew his mother was betraying me and said nothing. The betrayal from Victoria hurt, but the betrayal from my kids? That was a wound that went deeper than anything else. I found other messages too. Victoria telling Tyler about our intimate life, mocking me, comparing me unfavorably to him, sharing private details that should have stayed between us. Tyler eating it up, calling me names, making jokes at my expense. Two people I'd never met, bonding over their contempt for the man who paid for everything. There were messages about money too. Victoria complaining that I was cheap because I wouldn't upgrade her SUV to a luxury model. Tyler suggesting she deserved better than my middle-class lifestyle. Plans for their future together, moving to his buddy's place temporarily, then getting their own apartment once she got her half from the divorce. They'd calculated it all out, assumed I'd be blindsided, that she'd walk away with half of everything, that I'd be so desperate to avoid conflict that I'd just hand it over. They saw me as a mark, not a person. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling cold. Crystal clear, calculating cold. If my family wanted to play games, I'd show them what happens when you underestimate the boring guy who pays all the bills. I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Her name was Patricia, and she came highly recommended by a guy at work who'd been through a nasty split. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp as a razor, and had a reputation for leaving opposing counsel in tears. "What are we working with?" she asked during our first meeting. I showed her everything. The recordings, the messages, the timeline I'd built, the financial records showing I'd paid for literally everything, while Victoria contributed nothing for the past decade. Patricia smiled. Not a warm smile, more like a shark spotting blood in the water. "This is very thorough. You've done my job for me. Ohio recognizes fault-based divorce and adultery as grounds. With this evidence, we can pursue an unequal division of assets in your favor." What about the kids? They're old enough that the court will consider their preferences, but parental alienation is a factor we can argue. If we can demonstrate she's been poisoning them against you while conducting an affair, that helps your case. "I want full custody." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That's ambitious. Courts usually favor joint custody. She's been using our children as accomplices in her affair. She's demonstrated poor judgment and parental misconduct. I want that documented." "Understood. Let's build the strongest case possible." Over the next 3 months, I played the oblivious husband perfectly. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched TV while my wife texted her boyfriend, and my kids treated me like furniture. I smiled and nodded and played my role. But I was also doing something else. I was preparing for war. First, I secured my finances. I'd always handled our money because Victoria didn't like dealing with numbers. Our joint account had about $43,000. I documented every deposit, proving 100% came from my income. I also had a separate savings account Victoria didn't know about with another $67,000. My inheritance from my grandfather, kept separate specifically for this kind of situation. I changed my direct deposit to go into a new account at a different bank, left just enough in the joint account to cover bills I was legally obligated to pay. Every dollar I earned from that point forward went into my secure account. Next, I canceled Victoria's credit cards, the ones in my name that she was an authorized user on. She'd racked up about $8,000 in charges over the past year, mostly at restaurants and stores I'd never been to. Gym membership fees, new clothes, probably gifts for Tyler. I documented all of it, then cut her off. I also started separating our assets. The house was in both our names, but I'd paid the down payment from my inheritance and covered 100% of the mortgage for 15 years. I pulled all the documentation proving this. The cars were titled in my name, both of them. I'd bought Victoria's SUV outright 3 years ago. My sedan was a lease through my company. I even went through the house and photographed everything of value that I'd purchased: electronics, furniture, appliances. Created a detailed inventory with receipts where I still had them. If she wanted to claim half of everything, I'd make damn sure the court knew who actually paid for it all. The kids' college funds were in UTMA accounts with me as custodian. Victoria couldn't touch them. I also had a 401k worth about $340,000. Built entirely through my employment, since she'd never worked long enough anywhere to have her own retirement savings. Essentially, I built a financial fortress while she was busy texting her boyfriend and planning her new life. But I wasn't done. I needed leverage. I discovered Victoria had been telling Tyler that we were basically separated and that I knew about their relationship. Complete fiction. Tyler apparently believed he was dating a woman in the process of divorcing, not actively helping to destroy a family. I created a fake social media profile and sent Tyler a friend request. He accepted. Dumb move on his part. His profile was public, full of gym selfies and motivational quotes. I screenshotted everything, especially posts about loyalty and real relationships. The irony was beautiful. His most recent post was particularly perfect. A quote about real men who value honesty and respect women. Posted 2 days after he'd been sleeping with another man's wife. The comments were full of people praising his wisdom and integrity, if they only knew. I spent an evening going through his entire social media history. Found posts from 2 years ago about never being that guy who breaks up a family. Found inspirational rants about men who cheat being scum. This guy had built an entire online persona around being a good, loyal, honest man, while actively destroying my family. The cognitive dissonance was amazing. Tyler genuinely seemed to believe he was different, that his situation was special, that the rules didn't apply when it was true love or whatever Victoria had sold him. Then I sent him a message from my fake account. Hey man, I think there's something you should know about Victoria. I laid it all out. That we weren't separated. That she was still living in our house, sleeping in our bed, when she wasn't pretending to be at Jenny's. That our kids were in on the affair. That she'd been lying to him about our situation. I attached screenshots of our family photos from social media. Recent ones, showing us as a happy family. Included our anniversary post from 3 months ago, where Victoria had written about being blessed with her best friend and partner. Threw in some photos from Brandon's birthday party just last month, where Victoria and I were smiling together, cutting cake, looking like the perfect suburban couple. For good measure, I included screenshots of Victoria's credit card statements, showing she was still using cards in my name, still living off my income, still very much married, and very much financially dependent on the husband she was bad-mouthing to her boyfriend. Tyler's response was predictable. WTF, she told me you guys were done. This is messed up, man. Within hours, I saw the beginning of the end. Victoria came home from the gym in tears. She ran upstairs and I could hear her making frantic phone calls. Tyler, please. He's lying. No, I didn't. Please don't do this. Apparently, Tyler had some standards after all. When confronted with proof he was helping a married woman cheat on her oblivious husband, he decided to preserve his own image and cut her off. Blocked her number, blocked her on social media, told her he wanted nothing to do with her drama. Victoria's escape plan had just evaporated. I played dumb. Everything okay? She wiped her eyes. Fine, just gym stuff. Want to talk about it? No. Over the next week, I watched her spiral. She kept trying to contact Tyler through different numbers, different apps. He wasn't responding. Her lifeline was gone, and she was stuck in the reality she'd been trying to escape, married to the boring guy she'd been mocking for months. The kids noticed something was wrong with their mom. Olivia asked her if she was okay. Victoria snapped at her. I'm fine. God, why is everyone asking me that? The tension in the house became thick enough to cut with a knife, but I maintained my boring routine. Work, home, dinner, TV, bed, the predictable husband who didn't notice anything. That's when I made my final preparations. I rented a furnished apartment across town. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for whichever kid might eventually want a relationship with me. Signed a year lease, moved some of my personal items in over several weeks. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, my grandfather's watch collection, photo albums from before the marriage. Anything with sentimental value that I didn't want to fight over. The house felt less and less like home with every trip I made to the apartment. I was stripping away my presents piece by piece and nobody noticed. They were too absorbed in their own drama. I also prepared documents for the kids, letters explaining everything. The affair, the evidence, the fact that their mother had made them complicit. I wasn't trying to poison them against Victoria. I just wanted them to understand what had really happened. They were old enough for the truth. Finally, I was ready. Everything was in place. All my ducks in a row. Time to drop the bomb. I scheduled the process server to deliver divorce papers to Victoria at home on a Wednesday afternoon. I made sure I'd be at work with a solid alibi. The papers included everything: adultery as grounds, request for unequal asset division, documentation of financial misconduct, request for primary custody, citing parental alienation. Patricia had done her job beautifully. The filing was 47 pages of evidence, financial records, and character assassination backed up by cold, hard proof. I also scheduled simultaneous emails to go out. One to Victoria's parents, explaining the situation with attached evidence. One to my own parents, giving them a heads up. One to the kids' school counselor, informing them of the divorce, and requesting they monitor the kids for any emotional distress. Most importantly, I scheduled an email to Victoria's entire contact list, everyone she'd ever emailed from our shared computer. Friends, family, neighbors, PTA members. The email was simple. Hi everyone, this is Kevin. I wanted you to hear this from me directly. Victoria and I are getting divorced due to her ongoing affair. I know this will come as a shock to many of you. I've tried to handle this privately, but given that many of you have been part of our lives for years, I felt you deserved to know the truth. I apologize for any awkwardness this may cause. Best regards, Kevin. I didn't include evidence in that email, didn't need to. The court filing was public record if anyone wanted details, but the email served its purpose. It controlled the narrative before she could spin her version of events. Wednesday came. I went to work like normal, gave a presentation about Q3 logistics optimization, had lunch with my team, checked my phone around 2 p.m. and saw a notification that the process server had completed delivery. By 2:30 p.m., my phone was exploding. Texts from Victoria. First confused, then angry, then panicked. What is this? You filed for divorce? How could you do this? We need to talk about this. You can't just blindside me like this. Call me now! I didn't respond to any of them. I'd said everything I needed to say in 47 pages of legal documentation. Texts from Olivia. Dad, what's going on? Mom is freaking out. She says you're divorcing her? I responded, yes. Check your email. I've explained everything. Text from Brandon. Did you really file for divorce? Why? Same response. Check your email. The emails I'd sent to the kids were detailed but fair. I explained the affair, showed them some of the evidence, nothing too explicit, just enough to prove my point, and explained why their complicity had hurt me deeply. I didn't attack Victoria or try to make them hate her. I just laid out the facts and let them draw their own conclusions. My phone rang about 40 times that afternoon. Victoria, Olivia, Brandon, Victoria's parents, mutual friends. I ignored every call. There was nothing to discuss. I'd made my decision, gathered my evidence, and filed the paperwork. The time for conversation had passed. By the time I left work at 5 p.m., my email inbox was flooded. Responses from friends and family ranged from supportive to accusatory. Victoria's mother had sent me a scathing message about destroying the family. My own mother had sent a simple text, "Stay strong, son. We're here if you need us." I drove to my new apartment instead of going home. It felt surreal walking into a space that was entirely mine, with no history, no ghosts, no reminders of the life I'd just dismantled. I ordered takeout, cracked open a can of soda, and waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. Around 7 p.m., there was pounding on my apartment door. I checked the peephole. Victoria, looking absolutely unhinged. Hair messy, eyes red, makeup smeared. "Kevin, open this door. We need to talk." I didn't open it, just spoke through the door. "There's nothing to talk about, Victoria. Everything I have to say is in the court filing. You can't just throw away 15 years of marriage. You didn't even try to work on this." The audacity was stunning. "You had an affair. You made our children complicit. There's nothing to work on. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." "No thanks. Have a good night, Victoria." She kept pounding and yelling for another 10 minutes before the building manager came and threatened to call the police. She left, but not before screaming through the door, "You're going to regret this. You'll end up with nothing." Doubt it. The building manager, an older guy named Frank, gave me an apologetic look after Victoria finally left. "Sorry you're dealing with this, Kevin. Some people don't know how to accept consequences." Frank had been through his own messy divorce years ago, recognized the patterns. I actually got texts from neighbors in my building who'd witnessed Victoria's meltdown. One woman from down the hall sent me a message. "I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're okay." That was intense. Small acts of kindness from strangers who saw through the drama. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was upset, I was past that, but because I kept replaying all the moments I'd missed or ignored. The times Victoria had said she was too tired for intimacy, but somehow had energy to text Tyler all night. The family dinners where everyone was engaged except me. The vacation we'd taken 6 months ago, where she'd been on her phone the entire time, and I'd chalked it up to work stress. I'd been asleep at the wheel of my own life, and everyone around me had noticed except me. Over the next few days, the social fallout was spectacular. The email I'd sent had done its job. Everyone knew about the affair, and Victoria couldn't control the narrative. Her friends tried to defend her at first, but the evidence was too damning. Screenshots started circulating. People who'd seen her with Tyler at the gym came forward. The truth was out. Victoria's parents called me, tried to negotiate. Her father, Raymond, was actually reasonable. "Kevin, I don't condone what Victoria did, but for the sake of the kids, can't you consider mediation? Raymond, your daughter spent months making a fool of me in my own house, while my children watched and laughed. She can have mediation when she's ready to admit what she did and accept the consequences." Her mother, Patricia, was less reasonable. She left me a voicemail calling me every name in the book. accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. I saved the voicemail. Might be useful for demonstrating her character in court. The kids' reactions were mixed. Olivia initially defended her mother, but after reading the evidence I'd sent, she went quiet. No more texts, no more calls, just radio silence. I'd broken the illusion she'd been living in, and she didn't know how to process it. Brandon surprised me. He called a few days after everything went down. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course, buddy. What's up?" I didn't know how bad it was. I knew about Tyler, but I didn't know Mom was planning to leave or anything. She just said you guys had problems. What else did she tell you? That you didn't pay attention to her. That you were always working. That you didn't care about the family. I took a deep breath. "Brandon, I worked to provide for this family. Every vacation, every birthday present, every school supply. Where do you think that money came from?" Silence on his end. "I'm not trying to make you choose sides," I continued. "But I want you to understand the truth. Your mother had an affair. She lied to all of us, and she made you and your sister part of that lie. That's not okay." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Dad. You don't need to apologize for her choices, son. You just need to think about the kind of person you want to be." We talked for an hour. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Brandon agreed to have dinner with me once a week. Neutral territory, just the two of us. Small steps. Olivia was harder. She'd fully bought into her mother's narrative and wasn't ready to hear anything else. I sent her one final email. "Olivia, I love you. I always will. But I'm not going to beg for a relationship with you. When you're ready to hear the truth, the real truth, not your mother's version, I'll be here. Until then, I hope you're taking care of yourself. Love, Dad." She didn't respond. That hurt more than anything Victoria had done. But I had to accept that some relationships can't be saved. The divorce process moved surprisingly fast. Victoria tried to fight the unequal asset division at first, but her lawyer quickly realized the evidence was overwhelming. Adultery, financial misconduct, parental alienation. It was all documented in excruciating detail. Patricia, my lawyer, was a machine. Every time Victoria's attorney tried a new angle, Patricia had 3 counter-arguments ready. When they claimed Victoria deserved more because she'd sacrificed her career to raise the kids, Patricia pulled out evidence showing Victoria had chosen to leave the workforce because she didn't want to deal with office politics. Her own words from old emails. When they argued I was being vindictive, Patricia presented the timeline showing I'd only acted after discovering the affair and the kids' complicity. When they tried to paint me as controlling, she showed bank statements proving Victoria had full access to money and had blown through thousands on personal expenses without restriction. The depositions were particularly brutal. Victoria's attorney tried to make her seem sympathetic, the lonely housewife neglected by her workaholic husband. Then, Patricia started asking questions. "Mrs. Foster, how many hours per week did your husband work?" "I don't know exactly. The records show 45 to 50 hours. Standard full-time employment. Is that correct?" "I guess." "And how many of those hours were optional overtime versus required work hours?" I'm not sure. None of them were optional. He worked standard business hours, correct?" "Yes." "So when you told your friends and family he was never home, what were you referring to?" Silence. Patricia didn't let up. She went through every lie, every manipulation, every instance where Victoria had portrayed herself as a victim while actively destroying her family. By the end, even Victoria's own attorney looked uncomfortable. We settled out of court. Victoria got 30% of marital assets instead of the usual 50%. I kept the house, I kept both cars, I kept my retirement accounts. She got some money from the sale of equity in the house, about $40,000 after accounting for what I'd originally paid, and that was it. Child support was calculated based on Brandon staying with me. Olivia chose to live with her mother, which was her right at 15. I didn't fight it. The court ordered family counseling, which we attended separately because Victoria refused to be in the same room as me. The whole process took about 6 months. By the time it was finalized, I'd settled into my new life. The apartment became home. Brandon came over twice a week for dinner. We'd watch sports, play video games, talk about school. It wasn't the family I'd imagined, but it was honest. Work actually improved. The promotion I'd told Victoria about, the one she couldn't be bothered to acknowledge, came through. I'm now director of regional logistics, pulling in about $95,000 a year. The raise helped offset the financial hit from the divorce. I also started dating again, casually. Nothing serious, just testing the waters. It's strange being single at 38, but also freeing. No more walking on eggshells, no more being treated like a ghost in my own home. Victoria, from what I hear, is struggling. She's living with her parents, working part-time at a retail store, dealing with a daughter who's starting to realize her mother isn't the victim in this story. Tyler never came back. Apparently, he's dating someone his own age now. Karma's a beautiful thing. The social fallout continues. Our mutual friends mostly sided with me once they saw the evidence. The few who defended Victoria quickly backed off when they realized defending an affair wasn't a good look. Her reputation in the community is destroyed. She's known as the woman who cheated on her husband and made her kids accomplices. As for Olivia, I still hope she comes around. She's young, and she's been manipulated by someone she trusted. I keep the door open, send her birthday cards, let her know I love her. That's all I can do. Brandon and I are rebuilding our relationship. Last week, he told me he respects how I handled everything. You didn't lose your cool, Dad. You just did what you had to do. That meant more to me than any court victory. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled this. Could I have confronted Victoria earlier? Sure. Could I have tried counseling? Maybe. But the reality is, she'd already checked out of our marriage. She'd chosen someone else and made our children accomplices in her betrayal. I didn't destroy my family, she did. I just refused to be the fool anymore. The boring, predictable husband who paid the bills and asked for nothing in return? He's gone. In his place is a man who knows his worth, who won't accept disrespect, and who's building a life on his own terms. And honestly, life's never been better. Some people say I was cold, that I calculated every move like a chess game instead of dealing with my emotions. They're right, but sometimes being cold is the only way to survive when your entire world is burning down. I gave Victoria 15 years of loyalty, hard work, and dedication. She gave me betrayal, disrespect, and a front row seat to my own humiliation. So yeah, I dismantled everything while they watched, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Victoria wanted excitement, passion, someone who wasn't boring. She got Tyler the gym rat who bailed the second things got complicated. Now she's living with her parents, working retail, and dealing with the consequences of her choices. The kids wanted to be part of the adult drama, playing secret keepers, and treating their father like a joke. Now Olivia's in counseling trying to process why her family fell apart, and Brandon's learning what real integrity looks like. And me? I'm doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. I've got a job I'm good at, a son who's learning to respect me again, and a life free from people who see me as an ATM and a doormat. The house feels different now. Brandon's stuff is in his room. Posters on the walls, gaming set up in the corner, evidence that someone actually lives here and values this space. We have dinners together, real conversations without phones at the table. It's what family was supposed to be all along. I sleep better than I have in years. No more lying awake wondering if my wife is texting her boyfriend. No more walking on eggshells. No more being the punchline to a joke I wasn't in on. People ask if I'm bitter. I'm not. Bitter would mean I still care what Victoria thinks or does. I don't. She's a chapter in my life that's closed. The only connection we have now is Brandon. And even that's handled through a parenting app so we don't have to speak directly. Last month, Raymond called to apologize. Really apologize, not the half-hearted sorry you're upset version. Kevin, I need you to know, we had no idea what Victoria was doing. If we'd known, we would have said something. You didn't deserve any of this. I appreciated that. Raymond's a good man who raised a daughter who made terrible choices. That's not his fault. He also told me that Victoria's been struggling, that reality has hit hard, that she's expressed regret. Good. She should regret it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.